More than 200 people watched it happen, and most of them were children. It was not the dead of night. It was a bright morning, in the middle of a schoolyard, with the whole yard looking up at the same time. The recess bell had just rung. Children spilled out into the sun, and within a minute or two, one of them pointed at the sky, then another. Then almost all of them. High above the rooftops, a silver dome-topped shape hung in the clear autumn air. It did not race past like a plane. It drifted. It slowed, and then, in front of hundreds of witnesses, it began to come down. This is the Westall sighting. On the 6th of April 1966, in the flat southern suburbs of Melbourne, it became one of the largest daylight mass sightings ever recorded. Most sightings are one nervous person, alone in the dark. This was different. This was a whole schoolyard in full sun, staring at the same thing at the same moment. You cannot easily tell that many people they simply dreamed it. To understand why no one has ever been able to explain it, you have to go back to how ordinary that Wednesday began. Westall High School sat on the flat southern edge of Melbourne, in a working-class suburb called Clayton South. Right beside it stood a smaller state primary school, full of much younger children. In 1966, Clayton South was a plain grid of new brick houses and young migrant families. A quiet place on the edge of the city, where nothing much was ever supposed to happen. Beyond the school fence lay an open stretch of dry grass and scrub that everyone called the Grange, a wide, empty paddock, edged along its far side by a tall row of dark pine trees. Wednesday, the 6th of April, was clear and bright, an unremarkable autumn morning. At about 11 o'clock, the bell rang for morning recess, and hundreds of students poured out into the yard. Exactly who saw it first, no one agrees. By many accounts, a group of girls came running back across the paddock, breathless, saying something was in the sky. Within moments, children everywhere were pointing up. They described it in much the same way. Round, with a slight dome or hump on top, gray or silver or white, with a dull metallic shine. One boy out in the paddock thought it had a faint purple tinge and guessed it was about twice the size of a family car. One of the clearest accounts came from a young science teacher named Andrew Greenwood. He watched it from the yard and he never wavered. A gray, saucer-shaped craft, he said, and he stood by that description for the rest of his life. It behaved nothing like an aircraft. By most accounts, it moved slowly, almost deliberately. At one point, it stopped altogether and simply hovered, hanging dead still over the open ground. Then it began to sink. Slowly, steadily, it dropped toward the Grange until it settled from view behind that tall, dark line of pines at the far edge of the field. A few children closest to the paddock were sure of more than a shape sinking out of sight. They said it came all the way down and rested on the open ground for a moment before it rose again. And here is where the story stops being simple, because the silver shape was not alone in the sky. Around it, witnesses saw aircraft, small light planes, by the most common account 5 of them, circling and banking near the descending shape. To the children, the planes looked like they were chasing it, climbing, turning, cutting across its path, as if trying to force it down or hold it in view. Some of the children were thrilled, others were terrified. A few began to cry and could not look away. Teachers came out into the yard and tried to herd them back inside, but most of them simply would not move. For something seen during a short school break, it lasted a strangely long time. Some remember close to 20 minutes of slow, controlled movement before it finally left. Then, by many accounts, it rose again from behind the trees. It climbed and it shot away to the northwest at a speed no one could match, leaving the circling planes far behind. When the shape was gone, the yard broke loose. Children climbed the fence and ran out across the paddock toward the pines, desperate to find where it had come down. What they found in the grass has been argued over ever since. Many of them remember a circle, a flattened ring pressed into the paddock, as if something heavy had rested there and lifted away. But even here, the memories split apart. Some said the grass was only flattened as if by wind. Others swore it was scorched, burned into a dark ring, and a few remember not one circle, but 3. 3 days later, on the 9th of April, men came to walk the field properly. Air Force personnel and a handful of civilian flying saucer enthusiasts crossed the paddock together and reported finding nothing of interest. By then, the children had been herded back inside, and that is when the strangeness moved from the sky down onto the ground. Some students later described men in dark suits out in the paddock, not teachers, not police in uniform. According to those accounts, these men told the children, quietly, not to talk about what they had seen. Back in the classrooms, some children drew what they had seen, the round shape and the circling planes. According to more than one account, a teacher gathered the drawings up. They were never handed back. One story, told many years afterward, claimed a girl who ran too close to the site collapsed and was carried away by ambulance. These accounts were gathered decades later and cannot be confirmed, but they were repeated, again and again. In the days that followed, word of the ring spread quickly. Curious neighbors and a few local reporters tramped out across the Grange to stand at its edge and see it for themselves while it lasted. Then the paddock itself was set alight. The very stretch of grass where the children said the object had come down was burned away. The landowner said only that he had cleared the field to keep trespassers off his property. And the school said nothing at all. No assembly, no explanation. Some students remember the headmaster warning them, plainly and firmly, to keep quiet about the whole affair. For an event with hundreds of witnesses, the strangest thing of all may be how little was ever written down. There was almost no official investigation, and almost no paperwork survives. The whole morning was simply left to fade. The newspapers were brief. The very next morning, a Melbourne paper offered a calm suggestion. The object had perhaps been a balloon, yet the same report admitted that a later check found no pilot, private or Air Force, who reported anything unusual that day. A week later, the local paper was far less satisfied. Its front page asked the question that still hangs over the whole case. Who were the 5 pilots, and why did not one of them ever come forward? And then, for a long time, the story simply rested. The children grew up. The paddock became a park. The strange morning shrank into a half-remembered rumor, the kind of thing grown adults smiled at, until decades later, a researcher named Shane Ryan went looking for the people who had been in that schoolyard. He expected a handful. He found scores of them, scattered across the world, all telling the same core story. In 2010, their memories were gathered into a documentary about that single morning. For the first time, the witnesses sat together and compared what they had seen. Many had spent their whole lives quietly, assuming that no one would ever believe them. The morning has since found its way into Australian history lessons. It is taught now in some classrooms as a real and unsolved event, one that a whole school witnessed and no one could ever explain. If a mystery like this one keeps you wondering long after it ends, a quiet like helps other curious minds find it. And this next part is where Westall stops being just a strange old memory. Their memories did not agree on every detail, but on the shape in the sky, the planes that chased it, and the silence that followed, they were remarkably consistent. Just how many people saw it, no one can say for certain. The estimates run from around 100 to more than 300. No careful count was ever taken, because no one in authority wanted a record made at all. And that is what keeps Westall alive. You can doubt one witness. You cannot so easily tell 200 children and their teachers, standing together in bright morning light, that they all imagined the same silver shape in the same patch of sky. So what was it? The most serious attempt at an ordinary answer came from an Australian researcher named Keith Basterfield, who spent years digging through old government files. He pointed to a little-known program of the era called HIBAL. In those years, the government was quietly launching large, silvery, high-altitude balloons to sample the upper atmosphere for radiation left over from atomic testing. The balloons were launched from Mildura, out in the state's dry north, and they were carefully tracked and recovered. A lost one, drifting far off course, should have left a clear trail of paperwork behind it. A balloon like that, pale and metallic, trailing a parachute and a boxy instrument package, could from far below be mistaken for a domed disc, and a stray government balloon coming down over a schoolyard might even explain the quiet officials who did not want it discussed. It is the best ordinary explanation anyone has offered, and it does not quite hold together. A drifting, sagging balloon does not bank and weave. It does not send 5 aircraft wheeling across the sky in what looked to hundreds of children like open pursuit. And there was something else. Several witnesses insisted the shape moved against the wind and changed direction as it went. A drifting balloon cannot do either. And when Basterfield went looking for the one flight record that would prove his balloon, the paperwork for that particular launch could not be found. Lost or never filed or quietly gone. The planes were never traced either. No record of 5 light aircraft over that suburb ever surfaced. To this day, no one knows who was flying them or what they were chasing. One skeptic tried to close the gap. Perhaps, he suggested, the first half of the sighting was that drifting balloon, and the second half was a single plane towing a long fabric target sleeve, a drogue that other aircraft could chase for practice. It is an ingenious idea, but it asks a single quiet schoolyard to have witnessed 2 rare and unrelated events: a stray balloon and a military towing exercise, falling together by pure chance into the very same 20-minute morning. Others argue the simplest answer is memory itself. The witnesses were children, never formally interviewed until they were in their 50s. Across 40 years of retelling, some researchers suggest real memories may have blurred and merged with the flying saucer films of the 1960s. It is a fair caution. Memory is fragile, and a crowd can slowly reshape a story together. Yet that explains how the details drifted apart over the years. It does not explain what 100 children first turned together to look at on a bright, clear morning. So the mystery does not really sit in the suited men, or the burned grass, or the missing files. It sits up in the sky in that first clear minute, before anyone had time to be told what they should think. So strip it all away. Set aside the suited men and the collapsing girl. Set aside the 40 years of retelling, the balloon and the fragile edges of memory. What remains is small and stubborn and will not dissolve. On a clear autumn morning in front of a whole school, a silver dome-topped shape came down toward an open field. Aircraft wheeled around it. And then everyone who saw it was asked very firmly to stay silent. Today, the Grange is a suburban park. Children play there on a silver climbing frame, built with a quiet wink in the shape of a flying saucer. And now and then, an old man stands at the edge of the grass and watches them, certain of only one thing, that whatever it was, they all saw it, every one of them together in the full light of day, and no one ever told them what it was. If you would like to sit with more of the world's unsolved mysteries, the ones that never quite let go, then stay a while and let the quiet settle in. Sleep well,